Kate Chopin was an American author best known for her short stories and novels that explores the theme of identity, gender roles, and the struggle of women in the late 19th century. One of her famous work is The Story of an Hour. The story begins by introducing Louise Miller, a woman with a heart condition, and her sister Josephine. Louise receives the news that her husband, Brentley Miller, has died in a train accident. The initial reaction is sorrow, and the news is delivered carefully to avoid shocking her too much. After being left alone in a room, Louise begins to process the news. She goes through a wave of grief but soon starts to feel an overwhelming sense of freedom. As she looks out of the window, she sees signs of new life and growth, like the spring weather, and feel a sense of liberation from her marriage. She begins to realize that without her husband, she is now free to live for herself. This realization builds tension as she contemplates her future. Louise's sense of freedom reaches its peak and she imagines the future ahead of her. However, the moment of liberation is short lived. As Louise is descending the stairs with her sister, Brentley Mellor enters the house, very much alive, having been nowhere near the train accident. His unexpected return is the dramatic turning point of the story. Louise's emotional state shifts drastically from joy to shock. The joy of freedom vanishes instantly, and she collapses. The realization that she is not free and will return to her former life hits her hard. Her heart, which had been fragile throughout the story, fails due to the shock. When Louise dies, the doctors later state that she died from the joy that kills, which is an ironic statement, as it contrasts with her true reason for her death and the devastation of her lost freedom. The characters in the story: Miss Louise Mellor. She's imprisoned after her marriage and faced difficult life with her husband, Mr. Mellor, who waits any chance to be free. Brentley Mellor, married to Louise, he is believed to involve in a train accident. Josephine, Miss Mellor's sister, she carries the responsibility to take care of her sister because of her fatal disease. Richard, Brentley Mellor's friend. He was in the newspaper office when the news of the accident arrived. After confirming the news, he went to Louise's home to pass on the news. One of the key themes of the story is the tension between freedom and oppression. Louise's initial grief quickly transformed into an overwhelming sense of freedom as she imagines a life without the constraints of marriage. This theme reflects the societal norm of the time where the women were often confined to restrictive rules within marriage. The theme implies the importance of the independence of a woman and having a voice in their own world. This sort of independence went contrary to societal norms during the Victorian era in which this story takes place. The open window symbolizes freedom, possibility, and new beginnings. As Louise gazes out of the window, she envisions the future of independence and self fulfillment, reflecting the liberation she feels from the confines of marriage. Louise's heart disease is symbolic of the emotional repression she has experienced throughout her marriage. It can be seen as a manifestation of the limitations and struggles she faces in her personal life. Ironically, her heart disease is what ultimately led to her death, a cruel twist of fate that suggests how deeply her emotional state has been affected by her circumstances. The mention of springtime in the story symbolizes renewal and rebirth. The natural world outside the window mirrors Louis' emotional awakening as it contemplates the possibilities of her life ahead. In conclusion, this story is a critic's the limited role of women in the 19th century. Louis' reaction to her husband's supposed death suggests that she might have felt trapped in her marriage and longed for autonomy. During the Victorian era, women's roles were largely confined to the domestic sphere, with expectations centered around marriage, motherhood, and managing the household, while the rights and opportunities were severely limited. Chopin challenged that women have voices, deserve an equal treatment and opportunities in the society, because if men can do, women also do. As news mentioned in the story of how Richard delivered a news that certain misinformed Louise Miller about his husband's accident, it reflects our time today. As fake news is very rampant, we must know what we are reading and reporting. Because fake news can lead us to serious consequences by spreading misinformation, distorting public. It can cause confusion, shape biased opinion, and create divisions among communities with false narratives. Combating fake news requires critical thinking, media literacy, and credible sources.